Julia, it's Rhonda. Can you hear me? Or can you try the *9 to see if you can put your hand is raised? I see it. I'm going to click allow to talk. Okay. Are you talking, Julia?
All right. How's that? It's not working. It says I'm unmuted. Rona?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Robert?
Can anyone hear us?
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, at last. I've been yapping at the phone. Okay, so we're connected. If I do *6,
Whatever you're doing is working.
okay.
Hear us all right.
But can I just leave it at *6 and then you just globally mute everybody? And then when you unmute people for questions, then I can just assume I can speak? Or how do you want to do this?
Really, just leave yourself unmuted and leave verbal
You're coming through very garbled.
Okay, hold on.
Thank you.
Julia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Rona. It's garbled, but I can hear you.
Okay, we're working on that.
Thank you. I appreciate your efforts, all of you.
So we might have a resolution. We're just waiting for one of the planners to come down. He knows how to hook up an additional speaker that might help.
Okay, I heard additional speaker that might help. The preceding, I couldn't understand that.
Okay, we're gonna have you hold a moment and we're gonna see what we can do.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You might. Not. It was, they were hearing us, but it was very bad sound.
Garble.
Julia, can you hear us now? And does it sound okay?
Yes, it's much more consistent. It's less staccato. I wouldn't say it's crystal clear, but it's a whole lot improved. Thanks.
Welcome.
The video. Good watch. Hello, everybody. I think we're about ready to get started. Sorry for our little delays. We had some technical difficulties getting started here. I am Scott Chesney with Spokane County Planning. We are here today for our next virtual open house, and we're going to look at one of the GMA elements today, specifically rural lands. We've got some slides to share with you, and then we'll be open for questions as we go. Those of you that are over here, sure know the drill. Raise your hand. We will watch for you. And this is not a public hearing or formal action, so we're going to be as casual as we can about taking comments. We'd simply ask that you try to keep your comments and questions to what we're talking about, and we will go on from there. You give me our slides. If someone can't see our slides, let us know. I think we've got them up here. What we're going to cover today are these points. Kind of give everyone a basis in the revised Code of Washington and our rules. We're going to talk about what the rural lands are by definition. We're going to look at some of the growth projections that we are working with, talk about where we've been so far, and then kind of add some other ideas of what's been happening in the rural lands. So, as we've hinted, this is a mandatory element for the Growth Management Act. It's 3670A. And you see here, it's fairly easy and obvious definition. It's important. Rural lands, along with resource lands, are important parts of Spokane County and the RCWs for the Growth Management Act. And so it's an area that we take very seriously, and we're looking forward to this discussion and more. So rural character, traditional rural lifestyles, economies, land use by wildlife. We will be talking about wildlife corridors as we go on. And to protect this rural lifestyle is why we have the urban growth areas, which we're not going to talk about today. We've really been focused on those in the early part of our work. But today we wanted to kind of take that step back and look at what's happening outside of those urban growth areas, which of course is a majority of the land area in the county. For those of you interested in the UGA discussion, tomorrow's Planning Commission meeting, 9 a.m., and the link is available. We'll be talking a lot about the environmental impact statement, alternatives from infill densities to growth on the edges and potential modifications to that urban growth area boundary. So that'll be tomorrow. So here you can see the lands, the general zoning map for the county. This is the county code definition, as we said, to provide those that rural lifestyle. You can see outside of the metro core, the vast majority of our county is in these, including our small communities on the Palouse, Cheney, Medical Lake, Airway Heights, somewhat metro, Deer Park as well. Really, zoning classifications, planning classifications include 5 different levels of rural lands. We're going to talk about a few of them here, starting with the rural traditional. And this is large lot residential. These are typically 1 unit per 10 acres of land. You can see the map on the left side, on the right side of the screen. They're a little bit faint, but the tan shaped or the tan colored areas interspersed among the white background. The tan areas are the RT zones. They are widely spread throughout the county, especially northeast to southwest. And that provides, that's a majority of our residential living is in those rural traditional zones. Next up are the rural conservation zones, which are a 1 per 20 acre category for development, which assumes even lower densities. These are oftentimes coterminous with wildlife corridors, river corridors, critical areas. And that the map you can see in this case, they're very light green on the white background, somewhat interspersed between the rural traditional areas, but also following that northeast to southwest pattern, and then particularly along the creeks and rivers. The urban reserve zone, which unfortunately is very hard to see on this map, I apologize for that. It is generally tucked in and around the metro core and a little bit around some of the larger small towns. And it's, you can see, it was designed to be the place where our predecessors thought we would start to grow starting now. When the plan was first created in 2001, these were areas outside of the immediate urban growth area, but were in the path or the perceived path of development. Again, these are, right now, there are one dwelling unit per 20 acres, and that's designed to preserve larger parcels for future urban development. And these also are allowed and encourage rural clustering. And so if you had 10 20-acre parcels, you could have 10 lots and cluster them down in 1 acre lots and leave the rest of it open space until and such time it became part of the urban growth area. So this is intended to be the first place we look for growth in the future. And then rural activity centers. These are recognized by the Growth Management Act as sort of historic crossroads for the long ago growth of the community. They might have been where a railroad crossed a county highway at some point. There might have been a grain elevator, or later on a gas station or a grocery store or church. Some of these rural crossroads, many of them still exist in some form, and we're looking at preserving their ability to be that small economic center for more remote and rural areas. We are also working with our companion planning directors from other counties to try to strengthen the ability of these to grow in a new way with some perhaps legislative changes to the Growth Management Act. But these are very small and interspersed throughout the county. Let me pause for a second. I don't see anybody online without. Hang on, everybody. We're trying to see if we can take a look at things here. Okay, but we're gonna go back to our slides. So where are we going for growth? And if you have been with us before, you've seen how we're using the Office of Financial Management, or OFM, population projections, which come in a low, medium, high perspective. We're using that median number as our planning horizon, our planning number. That then drives into what's called the Housing for All planning tool, which was created by the Department of Commerce. And it then allocates this growth by community and by income bands. And that latter part is a new requirement in GMA. It just came into being in the last legislative session, where prior communities doing planning had to plan for lower income housing, but there was no further guidance or direction to that. Now we have to account for the likely and shortage of units in each of these income bands that you see at the bottom of the screen. And those percentages are percentages of the area median income. And the second part of that is the rural side of this for today's relevance. And you can see here that we're projected for more than 6,000 new units being necessary by 2046. Now, if you look at the top paragraph, population expected to grow by 4,700 persons, but we're saying almost 6,200 housing units. This HAPT tool takes into account an existing shortage of housing units and is also 3 years a little bit out of cycle with the others. So that's why there's more units than there's population at the moment. The units are trying to pick up an existing shortage as well. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay. Tate is our housing expert on this, and he tries to school me appropriately. I try to do my best to understand. So we're looking at 6,200 units in our rural area. And you can see here, there's none of those that are being forecast in the 50% and under. It's only in the 50% and over group. How that looks in terms of breaking that out by those income bands. The county median income is a little over $73,000, and that's household median income. And so you can see the 50% is 36,000, 80% is about 60,000, and it breaks out into those upper and lower bands of housing costs. Those are, as probably everybody on this listening to this and has seen this, those are very challenging numbers to try to purchase housing services of any kind. And that's going to be one of the challenges for us and for many, many communities is, if this is the median income bands that we're looking at, can anyone build housing for sale or for rent that can fit into those ranges of affordability? And that will be a challenge both in and out of the communities in rural areas. So what we've done earlier this year, we were in Valley Forge, Genie, and Deer Park over this spring. We certainly heard concerns from some of you, urbanization and sprawl to be sure, but also the economic pressures. And that's, we've summarized an awful lot in that second bullet, but we heard very clearly the challenges that are affecting our ag communities as well as those who are simply in large lot residential living. And so changes that we heard, agricultural viability, water and resource management, that's generally speaking the environmental side, maybe summarized, oversimplified in one bullet. But we've learned so much about the different soils in different parts of our county and how, particularly on our West Plains, we've got the challenges of a totally different aquifer system. We have what are called paleo channels that are filled up from the historic floods and allow for water to transmit under the surface very fast, which is unusual when you're talking about aquifers. And that, of course, has made the situation with the contaminated water, the PFAS, a critical issue on our West Plains. So those environmental issues and management are going to be a very important part of this environmental impact statement as we go forward. So things that are under study or underway now, that capacity analysis, as you saw, 6,000 or so units. What capacity do we have for that? Where can it go? How can that be developed? And it's particularly of concern when you think about the permitted and required densities per dwelling unit in those rural classifications. One dwelling unit for 10 acres, one dwelling unit for 20 acres. Finding available land for 6,000 units is not very easy. Wildlife and open space corridors, these have several elements. One is the clear path here of leaving open those corridors for wildlife to transfer through the county. Also, a lot of these have opportunities for some level of open space and trail considerations as well. And then that last one is the rural element chapter audit. And what that is very simply looking at the existing chapter in the comprehensive plan, reviewing those statements, which goals are still valid, what's missing, and certainly what's missing is something that's brand new, and that's a climate and resiliency element, and that will overlap into the rural and resource elements to a significant degree. And so that chapter audit is where you and we together, public and staff, will start to restate our vision and goals for the rural areas that become the guiding forces for projects that happen in the rural areas, because they must tie back to those goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. So moving on, we're not going to get deep into ag today, but I wanted to put it up. If you look at the relatively small county map on the right side, you can see the light green and dark green areas. If you recall the traditional rural conservation area maps that were from that northeast to southwest corridors, you can see that the rural, or these ag lands, large tract and small tract ag, are in kind of those open areas. And so they're filling in the areas that were not part of the other kind of zoning. These are the areas that are called resource lands, and they're protected to a significant degree by the Growth Management Act, where nothing should happen in here that degrades the ability of agriculture to perform. So that's a big change from city planning, but it's something that becomes a priority for planning the rest of our rural areas. And we're going to be talking about those resource lands and ag lands a couple of sessions down the road. So we'll be much more digging into that. And I didn't see all the names on our list. We have had some collaboration with the Farm Bureau, the Cattlemen's Association, and others that are in the business. And we're grateful for their participation to help share what becomes vision and goals from those that are out there with boots in the dirt and having to do this business with the passion they do, with all the challenges that happen with that. Agritourism. We'll kind of finish up our formal part here in the next couple of slides. Most of you, and you'll see it on the next slide, most of you know what the Green Bluff area is. That's our kind of a key area, but what we're looking at for the county, we have had a number of requests of property owners in the rural lands to be able to use those lands for something other than just their residential or some small businesses, wedding venues, corporate meetings, things like that. And so agritourism is a big push. It's meeting up with some challenges in the Growth Management Act. We'll share one of those with you in just a second. So, as we said, Green Bluff is what we all know as agritourism, and it's well established. The Green Bluff Growers has been organized for years, and yet this is not entirely defined by agritourism as well. And so we've got this as an example of where to start, where some counties don't. But it'd be something to see as to whether or not agritourism can expand in meaningful and legitimate ways within the ag areas, as well as into the non-ag rural areas. And as you might imagine, one of the challenges of trying to do bigger events, wedding, corporate meetings, family reunions, in those traditional rural areas is, even though they may have a 10-acre minimum size, a lot of those were created before the GMA was in place. And so they're 2-acre, 5-acre. It's a lot more, you have a lot more impact on your neighbors if you've got a wedding going on with 100 or 200 people on a 5-acre site than you do on a Green Bluff site that might be 40 or 80 acres. And so we're very aware that while there's a push for this, there's also concern of how's it going to affect the neighbors. And not to get too far into the weeds, but a lot of people on a small site on farm roads, it sort of begs the question of emergency services. What happens if there's a fire or a medical emergency? Roads are clogged. How do emergency vehicles get into these areas? So there's a lot going on in this agritourism issue. this is something that happened a little while back, and it's related to King County changing their ordinance to better allow for some of this tourism effect in what are called the winery, brewery, and distilleries areas, where they wanted to expand their tasting rooms and consequently their parking and other things. They were appealed to the Growth Management Hearings Board that they had degraded the agricultural character and utility of the lands by taking ag lands out of production and making it a parking lot. That decision of the hearings board was appealed. It was appealed and the appeal was successful. The appeals court was then appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court found for the original Growth Management Hearings Board that they did violate the GMA because it did not take into account that degradation and it was not adequately identified or investigated through the SEPA or State Environmental Policy Act. So this is on the ground now as guidance for what you can and cannot do to bring that agritourism into these areas. We're still studying what this means, as a lot of other places, particularly counties are, but we'll be, working with our colleagues at Commerce and others to try to create something that works for our rural landowners and passes legal muster. So the last one we want to talk about is also very prominent and over the last couple of years, and that is wind energy, notably the wind turbines that you can see in Benton County or Whitman County. We know of energy companies that are looking, prospecting, so to speak, in Spokane County. We've heard from property owners, both those that are being approached by the energy companies to lease their land and those that are opposed to the visual blight of the facilities, generally speaking. What our team has done is go through what we call the best available science, say, how are these being studied and regulated around the country? And you can see we've come in, this is again very simplified. We've created really 5 criteria to try to discern where can this work in Spokane County and where should it be viewed with great skepticism. And so the first one is the wind itself. No point in even starting a discussion if the winds are insufficient. What we've found, what staff has found, is that 5.8 meters per second is sort of the low threshold of being viable for that. And in our map on the right, it's actually the gold, and then the pink is the next step up a little over 6 to 7 meters per second. So it's evident that the patterns of wind development are from our southeast into our west central part of our county. So those would be the areas that the wind companies, the energy companies are looking for most directly. The next part is critical areas. And here you can start to see, again, a little bit similar to the traditional rural conservation pattern of northeast to southwest, but particularly in the southwest, from Spokane through Cheney, Medical Lake out to our southwestern border. The yellow is aquifer protection levels. The greens and blues are critical areas. There's a lot of it out there. To the immediate, east southeast of Cheney is the Turnbull Wildlife Refuge. Not surprisingly, in these channel scablands because they're part of migratory flyways, and so those are hard, challenging areas for wind turbines, and for a couple of reasons. One, if you think of Turnbull, propellers on towers several hundred feet in the air and migratory birds are not usually a good combination. Also, though, on the ground, what we found is to drive the foundations into the earth sufficiently to hold up under the wind pressure of turbine and the blades is a significant depth of foundation and a significant mass. Groundwater is a huge issue in this part of the county, and if some of those foundations are pushing down into the water table below aquifer levels at times, you can end up with unintended consequences where you may drain away water from your neighbor's well, or you may puncture an aquifer lid of some kind, and it may contaminate clean fresh water underneath that again is being drawn by perhaps you or your neighbor's well. So it's both what's above the ground and below the ground that is very important for the critical areas part of this analysis. And then biodiversity areas are those that they really can't be mitigated if they're broken. And again, you can kind of see where Turnbull is, east southeast of Sheedy, but covering a lot of those channel scablands. These are, as we said, these are things that, especially the Department of Fish and Wildlife, point out that they're virtually impossible to fix, and they're virtually impossible to prevent harm once it starts. And so that becomes a further constraint of where these turbines should be going. Important part here, and I know it looks like a cluttered map, but the three basic colors come out pretty clearly. The green lands are prime ag, by the USDA prime ag soils, and light and dark green is just prime ag, light green is prime ag if it's drained in some way. Blue shows soils that if they're irrigated would be considered prime ag, and then red are those that do not qualify. Again, the pattern is very consistent in the southwestern part of the county. The channel scablands are not good for agriculture. You can see that, instantly clear here. And importantly, the southeast part of the county, our Palouse, our part of the Palouse, is almost all prime ag lands. And like limited resources, when prime ag lands are damaged or removed in some way, you don't get them back. They're gone, then they're gone forever. So that leads to this. And again, it's a complicated map on the screen, but it shows the areas, it's a composite, the wind at right speeds. You can see a dashed circle around the Fairchild Air Force Base. That's a 15-mile buffer from the runways. And that's very simply the Air Force mission, even the current mission with tankers, if they are departing to the southwest, experience an engine out or some other anomaly on their performance, can't climb as fast as they normally do, all of a sudden, if there are wind turbines that are 700 and 800 feet in the air or 1,000 feet with the blade spinning, the airplane is in some danger of not being able to go over that obstacle. So we have worked with Fairchild, and we've established this 15-mile buffer. Fairchild is also working with the governor's office to establish this as a standard buffer around military airfields throughout Washington. Then the other things that you saw in the previous maps, away from the critical areas, protecting Turnbull, certainly away from the municipalities and the UGAs. And then that last one, a mitigated impact on ag lands. What you can see in the map is in the southeast corner of the county, there are 6 sections of land that are free of the constraints other than ag. And so in one way, those are the 6 sections of land that are most suitable for wind towers. But now if you think back half a dozen slides to that King County case, if wind power is going to go there, it must be able to demonstrate that it will not degrade ag production at all, or at least not in a significant way. What we know from working with the energy companies is each tower ultimately takes up about an acre of land. And for the moment, that doesn't include the construction roads, which are significant, or the resulting maintenance roads, which are more like a farm road, but have to go through the fields to connect the towers. And so if you take a 50 or 100 tower array, that is well over 100 acres of land that is now out of production. We believe the Growth Management Act would find that in violation of compliance, and therefore there's a challenge even in these areas that are not constrained by the other things to be able to have this thing happen and not have a negative impact on agriculture. So with that, I will stop talking, and we will drop our slides here and we will listen to any thoughts, comments, or questions you may have.
Hello, can I speak?
Go ahead.
Hi, Scott and all your people. This is Julia out on the West Plains, Palisades neighborhood. Three different elements that you've discussed. One had to do with the existing and proposed housing for the rural traditional lands, and you called it a capacity analysis. And what I heard was you discussing the need for another 6,200 units, which includes existing need and projected need out to 2046 or 36, and that there's a 73,000 median income out here. But I did not hear, and I don't have the maps because I can't find them posted online. And so I guess if I'm on the Zoom software, I could possibly see them. But this is not a capacity analysis. This is a needs tally. I haven't heard, and if I could see the maps, maybe I could dial this in a little more carefully. There's rural lands and there's capacity for rural lands to accept housing. But all you've discussed here is what's needed or what's projected to be needed for housing in an area that's already, we know there's at least two poverty tracks out here in and around the Airway Heights. And if you drive around out on the West Plains, you'll see why. There's numerous pretty down in the heel mobile home parks, but you still haven't addressed what is the capacity of the land to accept these thousands of units at a very unrealistic price per housing unit. $73,000 might get you a shed, a barn out back. So that I'm concerned about that because I'm not hearing capacity, how you analyze capacity. You've given us numbers of what's needed, but not the capacity of the rural area to accept that.
That's a good
and
observation.
Then the second,
Go ahead.
well, we just keep missing, and this is supposed to be the environmental aspects, but every presentation I've heard only covers housing and the need for housing, which I readily admit is just desperately needed. We've got Camp Hope living out here in Indian Canyon now, so we know there's lots of homeless. But the other update had to do with when you're discussing rural traditional and rural conservation, you are operating with information that has not been updated since 2018, and even that update of the critical areas ordinance was barely an update, if it really was kind of a cut and paste, as I've found out. So again, you're operating on information that is very out of date, at least 8 to 10 years out of date. So what you're declaring as critical areas, at least in the maps you've formulated for today, those are grossly out of date. The susceptible aquifer area map is extremely out of date. So I keep saying this is the cart before the horse. You do not have a really finely tuned idea of what the existing conditions are out here. The soils, we know, ad nauseum probably that we've got massive PFAS contamination, but we've also got all kinds of other contamination out here on the West Plains. And the West Plains being Feeney, Airway Heights, Medical Lake, Four Lakes, all of that. PFAS is not the only problem out here. So there's that. And then in the alternative energy, you're talking about wind and wind speeds. I haven't heard you mention solar access. And that's kind of a verboten term and topic with at least our power company, Inland Power and Light. They don't like solar access. It's problematic for them because it's distributed generation and it gives them more work to keep track of those who have adopted solar. So wind is not the only alternative energy to be concerned about or to be proponent of. So those are just three for today. I have a bunch of other comments from previous Zoom meetings you've held, but trying to get those notes coagulated, you might say, and I'll send them to you and the Planning Commission and the Department of Commerce, because the cart is simply before the horse. And then one last thing, sorry to monopolize, but I am very concerned about this. One of the other things that I have passed on to into your staff cognizance is that there are hundreds of thousands of square feet of vacant commercial and industrial lands. We know that consumers have changed their habits. They're mostly online, so we've got these shipping fulfillment centers, and we also know that there's downtown. There's just nothing but vacant property on every square intersection, every corner. So why are you looking first to spread and infill when you can use at a greatly reduced price, in that there's infrastructure, there's power, sewer, water, there's transportation, there's medical services close to many of these vacant properties? I just invite you to picture the Sears building out at the Spokane Valley Mall. And right across the freeway to the south is all kinds of medical facilities and services. There's transportation. There's all kinds of opportunities for reuse of commercial space. And if you could get with the realtors and the property owners and say, hey, let's rethink this, then maybe you're not going to have to spread out into rural lands. Because I'm looking at your land capacity analysis from 2023, and you persist in calling these rural lands vacant. They are not vacant. They are providing groundwater infiltration. They are providing area for wildlife. They are providing a rural traditional lifestyle that people chose when they bought their acreage. So even it's fenced, you may not see, they're grazing their cattle and their other livestock. It is not vacant land, and I would invite the listeners to rethink that term. What is vacant is hundreds of thousands of square feet of commercial industrial space. Why don't we challenge the owners and developers of those properties to repurpose and house people close to existing roadways and bus lines and its grocery and et cetera, et cetera?
Interrupt, please.
Because this land capacity analysis is woefully, it does say preliminary, so I'm going to invite you to update that with this new thinking that you've got hold of, and lean on something more up to date.
Let me address a couple of those directly. You mentioned the housing need, and you're right, it's a needs analysis. It's not a capacity analysis. That's a number that comes through the state, through the Department of Commerce, and through the formulas of that HAPT tool. There is no determination yet as to where that need can be met, where there is capacity. In terms of reusing structures, that is an option, but recognize that Spokane County is not planning for downtown Spokane. And while we try to plan partnerships with our colleagues across the river, we have done that. We have both talked about downtown development for 10 years. And the simple fact is, if the market was responding to that, you'd start to see some of that, and it just doesn't seem like it's ready for downtown yet. Doesn't mean we can't push for it. I agree with you. But in terms of the issues on water, part of what we're doing is looking, especially because of what we've learned in the West Plains, is changing what you call the cart before the horse when we were talking about the kinds of housing before. Well, now we're taking a step back and saying, what can we understand about the critical areas? What can we understand about the environmental concepts before we start looking at where we have capacity, or how is that going to constrain capacity? Yes, our ordinances are old. We're updating them. The CAO is in for a complete refresh, and we'll be able to share some of that at the end of the month. And so we're making really significant progress on better understanding the fragility of our ecosystem, and that will help us plan for growth in much better ways. And yes, there will be a big emphasis on trying to reuse old properties in a new way. That doesn't necessarily mean that the market won't respond by saying we still want to have places of low density, single family development. And we have to accommodate all those that want to move here to some degree. It's a big county, a question of where. It doesn't have to be in the places it was before. So we're working on that, and you will see and hear a little bit of that, about some of that tomorrow at the Planning Commission. But then as we come out and talk to the community over the end of the month, we'll have more information about that we can share as well. Again, today was really focused on those traditional rural areas. And one thing that we're working on in partnership with our local group called Broadlink, and Ariane Schmidt is here in the audience, and ask her to step in for a minute, because one of the issues is that I see from rural planning, and this is true for our small towns, whether in the Palouse or small rural activity centers, if they can be better connected through internet and broadband communications, then there's far more choices of where people can live and not have to go just in a city or somewhere else. So, Ariane, if you're still here, would you mind stepping up?
Good morning. Thank you so much. I guess we're at afternoon now. I absolutely would be happy to share. Thank you, Scott. And it's just such a great overview. I don't know if you have the capacity to allow screen sharing. If not, no problem. I can just share things verbally. You let me know what your preference would be.
I don't think we can from here, Ariane.
Okay, that's fine. What I'll do is I will share things verbally, and then I will put in the Q&A a link to what I'm talking about, particularly for this rural focus. And to your point, Broadlink is a public development authority formed by Spokane County with the singular mission of assessing and partnering with private ISPs in our small towns and cities in and among the unincorporated area, to make sure that what has become a new essential utility, which is the ability to adequate broadband, does indeed come to our rural areas. What we have found is that just over the course, naturally, over the duration of the world of the internet, most notably found in COVID, is if folks had adequate internet, they could work from home, learn from home, receive essential services like telehealth from home, that really allowed that household resiliency and, at the lowest possible level, resiliency and development opportunity to occur. Spokane County, as of January 2024, was 5th in the nation for highest number of addresses that did fall below that minimum standard. And so Broadlink has just recently deployed 5 active sites for fiber and fixed wireless. We received a $5 million USDA grant and just recently received a provisional notice of award for an additional $90 million to bring high-speed internet to our rural areas. And this, I believe, allows for our rural communities to preserve the essence of what makes them unique, and allows them to participate in commerce and development in such a way that without internet, that couldn't occur. So whether that's the agritourism, whether that is basically remote working, remote learning, we have a lot of active discussions with our healthcare to make sure that satellite sites can actually increase the level of acuity of care in their remote offices for live-to-live offerings, to make sure that remote home monitoring devices are given to individuals that might be place-bound. All of this we feel is just as essential as electricity, water, sewer, to make sure that as we're growing well, so everyone is equipped with what they needed for the future.
Thanks, Ariane. Appreciate that update.
And so I'll put this in the chat. I didn't know, Scott, if there's anything more specific you'd like me to talk about. A lot of my stuff is pictures, but you know, I encourage anyone, and we do plan to submit all of the active projects to you for consideration into the comp plan itself, so that everybody knows that's part of the roadmap forward.
That'd be perfect. A good place to keep going with the discussion. Let's see. Linnell? Good afternoon. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. First of all, I want to know if the slides will be available, and if so, when and where. The second thing is, I think that your guidance on wind is really clear and helpful, and you know, I've been sort of nattering about that for some time. So big thank you for that research. And finally, I wonder if you could just connect for me or anybody who's listening, the urban growth area and the rural lands and how those two things sort of fit together. Thanks, that's all.
Thanks for your comments on wind energy. The chief author and researcher of that was sitting right at the very back end of this table and just walked away for a minute. So we'll give him a little head nod when he comes back. In terms of rural versus UGA, it's sort of the boundary line between the two where intensity stops and is not allowed to grow into those rural areas. So the urban growth boundary is designed for higher density, urban style development, you know, quarter acre lots, half acre lots, and smaller. Under the Growth Management Act, providers are not allowed to extend the sewer, for example, past the UGA boundary, because that will encourage urban development, and that's prohibited. So it's a tool created by the Growth Management Act to draw a distinction between growing at urban densities, which is under GMA highly desired and preferable, versus just being able to continue to build down the road in any fashion whatsoever. So it's a market constraint by design to try to keep development within a boundary that has built up urban services, built up transportation, access to social services, access to food and groceries. So it's a construct to try to form more compact urban places and preserve ag lands and rural lands from further subdivision. Go ahead.
Linnell asked about slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. They should be on our web right now, and if not, they'll be posted within a few minutes of wrapping up here at 1.
What should be posted?
Slides. The slide deck will be posted
Okay.
on our web if it isn't right now.
Is it possible in the future that you could post those before the meeting so that those of us who are not on the visual Zoom part could follow along?
Yeah, we can do that. We typically have we post documents themselves that are being under consideration by the PC. This was designed to be a little less formal, but yeah, as we go through these, we'll post them maybe 24 hours ahead of time.
And if I may, just go back to a comment you made there, Scott, having
Yeah.
to do with
Go ahead.
having to do with downtown vacant property. I was not in any way strictly referring to the thousands of downtown square feet vacant. I said the Spokane Valley Mall. There are lots and lots of places that are semi-rural or rural that I think it's incumbent on the county to be looking at as potential conversion to housing, no matter where it is. And if you go on, there's a realtor's website and you look at the stuff that's for lease and for sale, it looks like someone slipped.
Most of those properties are inside cities, and so we can encourage our partners to look at them. but there's not a lot of them directly in the county. That said, yes, we are considering the conversion of non-residential properties where that may be feasible. So,
My hand is up. Can I speak?
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought this was from 1 to 2 instead of 12 to 1, but will you replay this meeting on your website so that I won't have missed so much?
The meetings are recorded, so there's two things. You'll be able to see the slides directly, and then our meetings show up on our YouTube channel. Okay. So if you go to YouTube and look for Spokane County Planning Department will pop up in there, and you should be able to replay this entire meeting.
All right, well, I did plan to comment on the rural and the high, or the UGA. I am 25 acres in the middle of UGA. I watched the development surround me, and I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I don't think all the ducks are in a row yet. We have thousands of new homes, no transit system here in North Spokane County, and libraries are very far apart. And I just feel our aquifer and our forests need a little bit more protection before we consider putting in a lot more population. And I know that the water districts are extending out. The Avista is putting lines out as if this is already going to happen. But I feel we need to be a lot more thoughtful about how we grow. And I think we can grow within and internally and go from there. So I hope this hasn't all been said before, but thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We've just got a couple of minutes to go. Is there anyone that hasn't had a chance to ask anything or? Linnell, is your hand still up or did you want to add something?
I just wanted to know if you could speak to the idea of concurrency, which the last person commented on, the lack of services when development occurs.
Absolutely, that's part of our requirement. As we're looking through this EIS process at what we call these bookend alternatives, as that gets narrowed a little bit, we will be starting to study the concurrency of all of the required parts of GMA. So transportation, sewer and water, schools, water districts, fire districts, which are not part of GMA, but we're establishing good planning partnerships with them so that we can understand what are these primary, secondary, and tertiary impacts of potential development on those special districts, as well as the concurrency of facilities that are existing or planned to serve that development. And if they're planned, then the government responsible, city or county, must be able to show that in a 6-year plan that identifies a funding source and the time that they will be ready for use in development. So it's a very extensive process to link those availability of services to potential of where land can grow. And so if there were 500 landowners around the county that all wanted to grow, that analysis, excuse me, gets whittled down by who is adjacent to water and sewer, who has access to roads that are already able to serve that. All of those benchmarks are evaluated before we look at where we would grow the UGA boundary. And with that, everybody, we're going to wrap up. As we've noted, you'll be able to find us on our web, on YouTube, and those that are interested in more of that, the growth discussion specifically in the urban growth areas that nearby, we'll be doing that with our planning commission tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then we will see we'll see some of you perhaps back here first Wednesday of November, and we'll have another discussion. So thanks for participating, everyone. See you.